So now on to Hinduism. And the main topic within Hinduism that social conflict really um, applies to would be definitely the caste system, which is one of the absolute fundamental parts of Hinduism, not only historically, but even today. We're going to look into how it's still lasted throughout the years um, into modern society. So this caste system ordered people into five groups, and these were four Varnas, and then another separate group that was lower than all the Varnas. And these were all by class systems and also careers in a sense. So the Brahmins were the top of everything. They they were priests, they were teachers, and they were the most revered, most respected people in the Indian community. Kshatriyas, the warriors and the kings and the rulers and the nobles, they were just under Brahmins. And so they were respected and worshipped, but they weren't seen as having the type of holy kind of reverence that Brahmins did. Vaishyas, the farmers, traders, merchants, these were artisans. They were the kind of the more respected of the working class in a sense. So they were wealthier than typical peasants or farmers, but they were still not part of the nobility. And then Shudras were the laborers. They were the peasant farmers, they were the builders, the people doing all the heavy lifting and working. Um, and those are the four Varnas. But then they had the Dalits, or the untouchables, and these were street cleaners. Um, they performed the dirtiest jobs. They were abused. It was a really really difficult life for them. And so this caste system, to go a little more into it, people were born into it. So if two Shudras had a child, that child would also be a Shudra. And generally, people married within their classes because a Brahmin didn't want to marry anyone lower because that would mean a lowering of their own class and a lowering of their kind of style of living. So they tended to try to marry above their Varna or within it, but generally they didn't marry above it because no one was willing to marry down for them. Um, and so it sounds like a crazy concept, but because of the way religion was intertwined with it, people really they stayed within it. They didn't protest it at all because Hinduism says that by performing one's duty well, then they will be reborn to a higher station in life. And this kind of sense of duty, it's called dharma. And it means performing all of the duties you have. So if you are a father, for example, you have a duty to your children, to your wife, to the people you work with, all of that. And if you do that according to how you're supposed to, then you will have a higher dharma, and then will be reborn higher up. So a Shudra, for example, that performs their job very well, performs their mission in life, which is to be a laborer, very well, they will then be reborn as a Vaishya or perhaps even a Kshatriya. But if they tried perhaps to go into teaching or to become a warrior, their dharma wouldn't be as high because they're not performing what is meant to happen in their life. So people really, even if they had ambitions, they didn't um, follow them because their religion said that if they didn't, or if they did follow them, then they wouldn't be reborn higher up. And this process of rebirth, it's really the end game is to achieve moksha, which is a perfect understanding of the world and Brahman and all of that. Um, and it's comparable to nirvana in Buddhism. It's essentially that state of enlightenment where a physical corporeal body does not matter anymore. Um, but really, when you look at it from a sociological standpoint, all the Kshatriyas tended to be kings, and Brahmins were the priests and the teachers historically. And they still are, but we're talking in a little bit in the past. And the Brahmins, the ones that preached religion and Hinduism and wrote all the stories, they were the ones on top. They were the ones preaching about the religion and using the religion to stay higher up in the caste system. And up until the middle of the 20th century, when the caste system was abolished, or at least caste-based discrimination was definitely cracked down upon and significantly lessened by a series of laws, then the Kshatriyas, they had all the power. But really, even today, although castes themselves, like the difference between a Kshatriya or a Vaishya, it's not necessarily how Indians define themselves. It's definitely stuck around because the Brahmins were the wealthiest individuals that could afford better education, that could afford traveling, that could afford to open all of these avenues for themselves because they were at the top. And it's changing slowly, but it's still a huge imbalance between each Varna. Not to mention the outcasts, the Dalits, the people that weren't even technically a part of the caste system, the amount of abuses and, rapes and murders and the way they're forced into slavery, it's the highest rate in all of India. So, the caste system, it really still is in place today in a sense. You still have the Brahmins that are typically on top. You still have the Kshatriyas that are typically also on top because that's how they started off, and it's not going to be a quickly changing thing. And it's a perfect demonstration of how social conflict can apply to a religion because it's really the people that were teaching this religion and teaching all the stories and teaching how to succeed in life. They're the ones that had the best lives. They were the ones that were able to manipulate the lower castes and the peasants and the commoners into not interfering with their business and not overthrowing them because it would mean that they wouldn't have a good afterlife. They wouldn't be reborn, and they wouldn't reach moksha. They would never reach that time of bliss. So it's really a perfect example. And